So as we're looking into Italy and Germany establishing nationalistic ideas, we need to look at the other side of the world. Japan was embracing similar fascist government beliefs and became much like Germany and Italy regarding political ideology and military aggression. Nationalistic leaders took control of Japan, and very soon after that, Japan attacks Manchuria, which is now China, for its natural resources in 1931. Keep in mind, Japan is an island nation. Access to natural resources is a big problem for Japan. In 1933, Japan quit the League of Nations. That was that group. It was established very similar to the United Nations, established under Woodrow Wilson as part of his 14 points. Remember, the United States doesn't sign into it. So I'm going to post right now a map of the Pacific Theater, just kind of to give you an idea as to where everything is happening, where Japan, how far Japan has taken over by 1942. So this is the Pacific Theater. Now, there were other signs that war was coming. Numerous other events occurred during the 1930s that were a prelude to more serious events. As I just mentioned, Japan invaded Manchuria in 1931. Germany, along with Japan, drops out of the League of Nations in 1933, and Italy invades into the northern African country of Ethiopia in 1936. These weren't the only signs. Germany made another bold move. They invaded and took over land that was declared off limits to them by the League of Nations. This land is Austria and Czechoslovakia. Hitler does this in 1938, At that point, Hitler says he's taking over these areas to protect German citizens that were living in these areas. Remember, some of this land had been German before World War I. And Hitler is given the opportunity to meet with the French Premier and the British Prime Minister. This was called the Munich Agreement. Now, this agreement was a way that Britain and France thought that they could avoid war with Germany. The British leader, Chamberlain, comments, he makes the bold statement, "I believe it is peace in our time." Now, what they had really done was sign an agreement of an appeasement. Germany had acted out on its own in somewhat of a brash disregard for others, but nobody was ready for another round of war. So, Great Britain and France agreed to the existing German aggression as long as Hitler promised that there would not be another war. This agreement, as I said, is based upon the policy of appeasement, giving up to pacify the aggressor. Give Hitler what he wants, and maybe he won't continue to be the aggressor. The problem is Hitler did not take long to violate his promise. Now, in Great Britain, Winston Churchill was the political opponent of the Prime Minister Chamberlain. He didn't want to give in to the demands of terrorists, as he called Adolf Hitler. And listen to this excerpt from his response to the Munich Agreement.
We have passed an awful milestone in our history, and do not suppose that this is the end. This is only the first sip, the first foretaste of a bitter cup, which will be proffered to us year by year, unless we arise again to take our stand for freedom. Churchill's response to the Munich Agreement.
Now, he believed, as you can hear in the excerpt, that to give in to Nazi Germany was only the beginning. It was only going to lead to severe consequences. Winston Churchill would eventually become the British Prime Minister for most of the war. The British people agreed with him and elected his party into power. So far we've focused in on France, Britain, Germany, Italy, everybody but the United States. Well, let's talk about what's going on in the United States. The United States was returning to normalcy after World War I, really concentrating on what's going on during the Roaring Twenties and the Great Depression. We needed to focus in on the United States at this point. European events were well known, but were a pretty low priority. Instead, we returned to a policy of isolationism. Notice the figure, or the cartoon, how isolation is the fence holding it up. We're taking care of ourselves. The United States also was determined to avoid another war.
Steeped in isolationism, Americans felt far removed from the bloody conflicts overseas. A poll taken by the Roper Organization at the start of the 40s showed that 67% of all Americans were opposed to taking sides in the European war. President Roosevelt, always a man of the people, reflected that sentiment by assuring the nation that its boys would not be sent into any foreign wars.
I hate war.
Certain of safety, the country went about the business of living.